Today's video will focus on Unit 7, which was our study of Islam. You can see some of the learning targets on the screen, ranging from the geography of the Arabian Peninsula, to the major beliefs, customs, and traditions of Islam, to sequencing the turning points of Islam, and finally identifying some of the contributions of Islam on Western civilization. As always, though, let's start with geography. So Islam is going to start on the Arabian Peninsula, which you can see on the map here. The Arabian Peninsula, as you can hopefully tell, is mostly desert. We can tell this because of the color of the map. There were some farming areas along the coast, but again, the climate was not ideal for farming. It was, though, in an excellent spot for trade. If we look at the other map over here, we can see here's the Arabian Peninsula. And notice it has access to the Mediterranean Sea for trade with Europe, the Indian Ocean for trade with India and China, and then the Red Sea for trade with Africa. So it's in a fantastic spot for trade, which means when the new religion of Islam begins, the ideas are going to spread very quickly. So early on, there were farming communities along the west coast of the peninsula, in those areas that were not brown on the previous map. Eventually, though, people are going to realize that the success of the region is going to be based on farming. Not on farming, but rather on trading. So a lot of these early farming communities are going to become major trade centers later on. As traders started to trade up and down the coast, they realized they needed a common language, or a vernacular, to be able to successfully trade. And this led to the development of Arabic, which we can see on the screen over here. One of the most important cities on the peninsula is actually going to be Mecca. And actually, if we go back a slide here, we have Medina and Mecca, both of which are going to be along the coast of the Arabian Peninsula, both of which will become important. Mecca is an important trade city, but also a pilgrimage city, because traders would come to this box called the Kaaba to worship. They would leave idols inside the Kaaba, making this a polytheistic shrine to start. And also an example of cultural diffusion, as you had many traders from the area coming to worship and leave idols at the Kaaba. But this will become important for something different a little bit later. So let's look at the actual founding of the Islamic faith. So the founder of Islam is going to be Muhammad. And Muhammad learns about Allah from the angel named Gabriel. Muhammad started as a wealthy trader, but then abandons his trading when he learns about the revelations of God from Allah. And he is the one that begins Islam. A lot of the people, though, in Mecca didn't like the fact that he was preaching a new religion, so he was actually forced to leave. They were scared that they were going to lose their pilgrimage spot at the Kaaba if somebody started preaching a different religion. So Muhammad travels to Medina. So we have Mecca here and Medina up the coast. While he was there, he didn't have to compete with other religions and the importance of the pilgrimage spot. So he was able to actually become a very powerful leader. He became a military leader, a religious leader, and a political leader, wearing 3 different hats. This made him very, very powerful. He was very charismatic. And he ultimately returns to Mecca in something called the Hajj. This is when Muhammad and his followers go from Medina to Mecca. When they get there, he claims the Kaaba for Allah. He actually goes inside, and again, he had a powerful military. That's why he was able to take the city, and destroys all the idols in the Kaaba. So the Kaaba is actually empty because it's not a polytheistic shrine anymore. Now it's going to be a shrine for the Islamic faith. And again, this is called the Hajj. So the journey from Mecca to Medina to escape persecution was the Hijra, and the journey from Medina back to Mecca to retake the Kaaba for Allah is known as the Hajj. After Muhammad's death, the religion's going to be led by the 4 rightly guided leaders, or the rightly guided caliphs. And they use their military to expand the Islamic faith into the Fertile Crescent area and also across northern Africa. So again, Islam was able to spread quickly because, yes, it did have a message that people liked that we'll get to in a second. And it also had access to the trade routes, but it also was a powerful military, so it was able to spread more effectively. Unfortunately, some of these issues, or this issue over leadership, is actually going to bring about the end of the spreading of the Islamic faith early on. And this is the Sunni-Shia split. After the 4 rightly guided leaders, there were some other leaders who didn't follow the rules of Islam as well as they should, which we'll talk more about in a couple slides, what those rules are. But as a result, there starts to be some questions over who should be the next leader of Islam. And this causes them to split into 2 groups, the Sunni and the Shia. The Sunni believe that any devout follower of Islam is allowed to be the next leader, while the Shia believe they have to be in the direct bloodline of Muhammad. But this issue over leadership You guessed it, is going to weaken Islam, like it has in every other unit we've looked at, whether it be the triumvirates in Rome or Justinian and the Pope with the splitting of the church. Ultimately, this weakened Islam is going to meet its end at the Battle of Tours. The Battle of Tours is actually in northern France, which is a little off this map. So the Islamic forces traveled as far as Tours until they were defeated by Charles Martel and the Franks, who we learn about next unit. From there, they're pushed back into Spain. This ends the expansion of Islam, but it actually launches their golden age until about 1258 when the Mongols take over. So the Islamic forces spent the early part of the religion spreading, but for the later parts, after they were stopped at Tours, they focused on making the civilization they had better, entering their golden age. As Islam grows, though, it had to move its capital a couple times, which is important to know. The first move was from Medina up to Damascus along the coast. They did this because it was easier to rule the vast empire from this spot. But this also caused some of the reasons for that split, because some people felt it was too far away from the Holy Lands of Mecca and Medina. Later on, they moved the capital from Damascus to Baghdad, in between the Tigris and Euphrates River and the Fertile Crescent. They felt this area was more central to trade in the region because you could travel on the rivers to get to multiple trade spots. So again, two examples of the capital of Islam moving. So it starts at Medina, later moves to Damascus, and then moves to Baghdad. Let's go ahead and take a look before we get to contributions of what some of the major beliefs, the go notes, graphic organizers for Islam. So again, the founder is Muhammad, and he is believed to be the last prophet. We talked about that. He got the message from the angel Gabriel. The text is known as the Quran. Please notice the two different spellings, the K and the Q, both of which could show up on a test. The Quran is believed to be the true word of Allah and is written in Arabic. So unlike the Bible, which is a story about the life and teachings of Jesus, the Quran is the exact word, believed to be the exact words that Gabriel told Muhammad when he revealed the faith to Muhammad. So Islamic people take the Quran very, very seriously because it's supposed to be the true direct word of God. In terms of location, it's going to start on the Arabian Peninsula, Mecca and Medina being important. As we talked about, they use those trade routes in their military to spread to the Fertile Crescent, North Africa, and Spain. And again, they don't make it to France because of their defeat at the Battle of Tours. This might be the most important thing about Islam, though, and that is their beliefs. First of all, we know that they are monotheistic. They believe in one God named Allah. And Muslim actually means one who has submitted to Allah. So Islam is all about submission. Submitting means you have to actually prove yourself. You have to actually actively do something to prove your faith in Allah. And this is known as the 5 pillars. The 5 pillars are faith, prayer, alms, fasting, and pilgrimage, or Hajj. Faith just simply means you have to proclaim that Allah is the only God and Muhammad is his greatest prophet. In terms of prayer, you must pray 5 times a day, facing the city of Mecca. And actually, you're praying to the Kaaba. Alms means giving money to the poor. You are required to give some of your money to the poor. It is a requirement to prove your submission to Allah. Fasting relates to 1 month a year called Ramadan, when you're not allowed to eat between sunrise and sunset for 1 month. The purpose of this is to show that you're willing to suffer in your submission to Allah. It's also a celebration when you reach the end of the day, and also the end of Ramadan. It's a celebration of your submission to Allah as well when you are allowed to eat. The final pillar is pilgrimage. This means that you, as a Muslim, if you're a Muslim, you perform the Hajj once in your lifetime. That is the journey to Mecca, the journey just like Muhammad made when he went to take the Kaaba for Islam. So if you have enough money and you're healthy enough, in order to prove your submission to Allah, you're supposed to visit Mecca and the Kaaba once in your lifetime. Another important note is that Islam does actually accept other prophets, such as Jesus and Moses, as prophets. But they have some major differences. They don't believe Jesus is the Son of God, and they believe Muhammad is the greatest of the prophets. But they don't ignore other religious prophets. And the places of worship for Islamic people are called mosques. The final piece for Islam is looking at some of their contributions. One is the structure off to the right, the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock is in Jerusalem, and it's believed to be where Muhammad ascended to heaven. Notice the influence of other civilizations. There's a dome on top, there's some arches, and there's even some columns. That should show some of the Greek and Roman influences, even on an Islamic building. Remember, Jerusalem's important actually to all 3 major religions. We'll cover that a little bit more when we get to the Crusades. The House of Wisdom was in Baghdad and was a center of knowledge. You could kind of call it a university for the Islamic people. And one of the main thing they did is they copied text into various languages, not just Latin and Greek like usual, but Persian and Arabic and other languages as well, to try to spread knowledge to as many parts of their empire as they could. And remember, this is what they did after they were stopped at the Battle of Tours. In terms of math, a guy I like to call Al K is going to invent algebra. So they had some big mathematical improvements. They also use the Arabic number zero, which they would have learned maybe from the Indian civilizations that will become important during the Renaissance later. Finally, in terms of science, a guy named Al-Razi is going to write books on medicine, particularly children's medicine, and make more advancements in medicine. They're also going to open observatories and study astronomy and study space, one of the first civilizations to really look beyond the Earth. And finally, they had calligraphy. Calligraphy is fancy handwriting that was made famous by the Arabic people. It's also famous in China. So there's a quick look at some of the major learning targets for Islam. Again, one of the most important things to remember is going to be the Go Notes for Islam, the founder, the text, the location, and the beliefs are going to be very important to remember, but also taking a look at how Islam started, why the Arabian Peninsula was such a good place for it to start in terms of spread, how it spread, some of those turning points, such as the Hajj, the Sunni Shia split, the Battle of Tours, and then also looking at some of these major contributions.